This is a very beautiful time of day to be associating with devotees in the association of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Just by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one is associating with Krishna. It might not be apparent to us in the beginning because we're conditioned souls. We're conditioned in terms of seeing things in terms of their material qualities, on their material form or nature. So we have books, and these books that we get introduced to in this world are all to do with mundane subject matters, material subject matters. And we think of a book as a material thing, but actually these books of Srila Prabhupada's are not material things, although they are material. That's the mystery in the beginning, that how can something which is obviously to our senses a material thing, like I'm holding Bhagavad Gita as it is now, it's a book, just like I'm here in my sister's studio, just like this is a book. But this book's subject it's called The Brilliance of Art Deco. It's to do with a mundane subject matter. But this book, and of course Srimad Bhagavatam, which I don't have a hard copy of with me, is dealing with a transcendental subject matter, a subject matter that is not in any way limited by material considerations. Material considerations are all limited by the influence of time and space as we know it. But time and space as we know it is just that, as we know it. Time and space exist beyond the confines of the dimensions of the material. And so it's very difficult when one is conditioned in this way to see beyond one's conditioning. But there's a very interesting little statement in one purport of the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, which will help us segue into our discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I'll just read that. It's in the purport of the 22nd verse of the 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. It's the last sentence. It says, in a Vedic mantra, it is said that as one becomes learned in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one proportionately relishes one's eternal blissful life. So there is no difference actually between Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna. The Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna in a literary form. Krishna is not limited by anything. All limitations are actually within Krishna, but Krishna is not limited by anything. Limitations are set by Krishna. So the limitations of our material senses are set by Krishna. And of course, our senses are individual, and the limitations of your senses are not the limitations of my senses. And the limitations of all human senses are not the limitations of a buzzard's senses. A buzzard can fly 8 miles up in the sky and has just a tiny little eye, but that eye can spot the carcass of a dead animal on the ground. So, but that is still itself a limitation, a delimitation. But that's all set by Krishna. But the point I'm getting at is that Srimad Bhagavatam, as I was saying, this is a beautiful time of day to come in contact with Srimad Bhagavatam. I remember when I first used to go to the temple, I used to get up. I lived in Richmond in Melbourne, and the temple was in St. Kilda. I used to get up very early in the morning and call a taxi and go to the temple, and I'd arrive there. Sometimes I'd go for Mangalati, but usually because of my work schedule, I'd get there in time for Srimad Bhagavatam class. And there's a very important point in the purport. Can we scroll this down a little? Can I share my screen, Subha Krishna? If I share my screen,
yes, I have made you a co-host, so you can do whatever.
Multiply. I'm okay. So I'm going to share screen with you all, and we'll get into this now with the, where is that? Srimad Bhagavatam, there we are. So we'll begin with the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. So I'll chant the verse, and I'll chant and I'll do the transliteration and the translation, and then we'll start in on the purport. Nigama kalpa taro galitam phalam sukha mukha dadra amrita drava samyutam pibita bhagavatam rasam alayam mohoroho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. Nigama, the Vedic literatures. Kalpataro, the desire tree. Galitam, fully matured. Phalam, hang on a second. Phalam, fruit. Sukha, Srila Sukadev Goswami, the original speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam. Mukhat, from the lips of. Amrita, nectar. Drava, semi-solid and soft, and therefore easily swallowable. What a word, drava. Samyutam, perfect in all respects. Pibita, do relish it. Bhagavatam, the book dealing in the science of the eternal relation with the Lord. Rasam, juice, that which is relishable. Alayam, until liberation, or even in a liberated condition. Muhu, always. Aho, oh. Rasikaha, those who are full in the knowledge of mellows. Bhuvi, on the earth, Bhavukaha, expert and thoughtful. And Srila Prabhupada's translation, O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadev Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Okay, back to everybody. How many people are listening now? How many people are tuned in?
18.
18. Okay, welcome to everybody. I got started before everybody was on board. Thank you all for coming. It's always very encouraging when people want to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Very few people in this age want to hear. So anybody who does want to hear, we have to understand you're in the association of very rare souls, very rare souls. And those kind of souls are being spoken to here, actually. You're all being spoken to here by this verse, whether you are a liberated soul or not. But then there are those of you who may be expert in various fields of knowledge, or many fields of knowledge, or many skills of the world. And then you're also thoughtful people. Here the word men is used in the philosophical sense. In talking philosophy, the masculine pronoun is used. But actually this applies to all expert, thoughtful people. Srimad Bhagavatam is not chauvinistic. The use of the masculine pronoun is not a chauvinistic thing. It is an ancient philosophical device for simplification of discussion. But I guess in the 21st century, we should use probably just the word people, all expert and thoughtful people. The admonition here, the encouragement here, the instruction here is to a very interesting word used here, relish. Relish Srimad Bhagavatam. Relish Srimad Bhagavatam. It's about tasting. We use the word relish in terms of taste. We relish food. It's relishable. I think probably that's the foundation meaning of the word relish, to relish food. But also we can understand the concept of taste relates to all our senses. We have taste in what we want to see and feel and taste with the tongue, and hear and smell. So the word taste also is not just related to what the tongue tastes, but taste is applied to what one hears. So Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to be heard. And if you think, we'll go back to this verse here, just close your eyes and listen to these words. Nigama kalpa toro galatam phalam sukha mukad amrita dravasam yutam pibita bhagavatam rasam alayam mahoraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. Excuse my imperfect pronunciation, but even with imperfect pronunciation, I think you get the sense that even the sound of these words, of this sloka particularly, is relishable. there's something almost onomatopoeic about these words, where just having them on your tongue creates a taste. Do it yourself sometime. Take this verse. Nigama kalpa taro, galitam phalam, sukha mukad amrita drava samyutam, pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam, mohoraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. And just then get the feeling in your tongue, actually, right there in your mouth. The sound of these words is relishable. Amrita, what a word, Amrita, nectar. And then in Sanskrit you have, it's a compounding language, not just an inflective language. Inflection is in regard to different syllables in words. But in Sanskrit, you can, like here, if you're looking at the script, you can see Amrita Drava Samyutam. It's actually 3 separate words. Amrita, nectar, Drava, semi-solid and soft, and therefore relish, easily swallowable. Samyutam, perfect in all respects. So perfect in all respects is one word, Drava is another, and Amrita is another that can be used in many different contexts. But here, they become one word. And in the Sanskrit, if you go up a little higher, you see, like in the English transliteration, we have Amrita hyphen Drava hyphen Samyutam, but that doesn't appear in the Sanskrit. In the Sanskrit, it's all one word. Amrita Drava Samyutam. Amrita Drava Samyutam is semi-solid and soft, easily swallowable nectar that is perfect in all respects. Perfect in all respects, complete and perfect. Perfect means complete. There's nothing lacking in it. Everything is there. And another meaning of Amrita, Mrityu means dead, death. So Amrita means deathless. So it's not just nectar, it's deathless nectar. It's not something that you will ever lose the taste for once you get it. And it is not only that you will never lose the taste for it, but the taste will increase endlessly. Amrita also means eternal. Mrityu is to do with temporary things, things that exist temporarily die. They cease to exist. Something, therefore, that is Amrita is also eternal, deathless. But it's not just that it's deathless. Eternal means also that it has no beginning. It has always been so. So what is happening here is that we are, through just looking here now at a computer screen or looking at a book, words on a page in a book, we are actually being introduced to something which comes from beyond all of this. How is that? Well, because Krishna is the master of all energies. He can do anything. So even though you and I can't see beyond a certain range, Krishna, who is beyond the range of sense perception, material sense perception, can at any time he likes manifest himself within the realm of our sense perception. And that's what's happening here. A lot of things are happening here. There's a lot of things to discuss here. And I don't want to get sidetracked either, because I think we should, first of all, relish Srila Prabhupada's purport to this. His purport. That's an interesting word in itself. I never came across the word purport until I started reading Prabhupada's books. What's a purport? What is a purport? Actually, we could actually look that up. I like to keep this dictionary on hand. We can look it up. What is a purport? A purport. There we go. Purport is a noun, an early 15th century meaning. The purport of something is the meaning, the tenor, the surface or expressed meaning of a document, that which is conveyed or expressed. The contents or the tenor comes from the Latin word with the first part being per, meaning forth, or the old French word porter, to carry, from the Latin portare, to carry. Sanskrit is usually and then it says something here, the PIE. PIE means Proto-Indo-European, and it's a hypothetical language. There's no written record of PIE. That's a whole big discussion we could have sometime. But here they say it comes from per, the second meaning of per, which if you roll down a little, usually in this dictionary, you find it, there it is, per, to. And it says here, this in Proto-Indo-European root meaning to lead or to pass over, the verbal root associated with per, from which prepositions and preverbs with the basic meaning forward, through, in front of, or before. And all these words are said to come from it, but then you look down here. It is the hypothetical source of, or evidence for its existence is provided by, and then the first thing is Sanskrit, parayati, carry over, to carry over. We'll come back to all that later. So a purport is something which carries over the meaning of something, or reveals the tenor. Tenor is another interesting word we can look at, but it reveals something more to us about what it is talking about. And so the purport of this is what Srila Prabhupada is giving us as an elaboration about this sloka. And he begins by saying, in the previous two slokas, I'll start here. In the two previous slokas, it has been definitely proved that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the sublime literature which surpasses all other Vedic literatures due to its transcendental qualities. It is transcendental to all mundane activities and mundane knowledge. In this sloka, it is stated that Srimad Bhagavatam is not only a superior literature, but it is the ripened fruit of all Vedic literatures. In other words, it is the cream of all Vedic knowledge. Considering all this, patient and submissive hearing is definitely essential. With great respect and attention, one should receive the message and lessons imparted by the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a lot, even in this little paragraph, that we can talk about. But actually, we can go on. The Vedas are compared to the desire tree. Notice it says here, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures. Very interesting. Very interesting conception being given here, that all of the Vedic literatures actually add up to one thing, a tree from which all our desires, by following the instructions that are given in these literatures, all of our desires can be satisfied. But here, the word mature fruit is used. That's a very interesting point. Because you think of a tree begins by putting out flowers, and then those flowers go through a transformation and a small fruit appears. And then that fruit begins to grow. And it goes through various stages of development. But there's a point just before, but there's all those points of development are not mature. There's a certain point of development where there's a reaction, a chemical reaction goes on within the fruit that makes it edible. Of course, you take a tomato or a mango, a guava, a banana, so many different fruits. They have applications at various stages of their development, and there are tastes associated with that. But then there's no taste like the mature, ripened taste. There's no other taste experienced along the way. They all have, and people may get a taste. People get a taste for fried green tomatoes. People get a taste for mango chutney. Mango chutney is made from green mangoes. It's not made with ripe mangoes. But then with a ripe, and from a green mango, you can get this fantastic chutney, the achar. But you can't get mango nectar. You can't get that beautiful drink that you make by juicing a mango in its fully ripened state. So then we come to this principle of a desire tree that in all different ways, the Vedas and the entire Vedic literature. There's a thing called the tree of Vedic literatures. You can actually Google that on Wikipedia. We could do that now just for a minute, just to help everybody get an idea of this. Where are we? Tree of Vedic literature. Tree of Vedic literature. The complete. Well, there's another thing here. If you all, when you look at the recording of this, or you can make it here, or I could maybe even put it in the chat. This is a godbrother of mine. Where are we? Oh, I've gone into it now. Atmatattva. Atmatattva.com, the Tree of Vedic Literatures. There's a series of lectures here where Atmatattva talks about all of this in great detail, which you can, at your leisure, look at. So, but I'll just put it in the chat now. Where's the chat? Where are we? Where are we? I'd have to stop sharing. I'll put that in later. And we'll come out of that now. You can all have a look at and listen to Atmatattva's lectures. But the Tree of Vedic Literature. If you go into this, do a Google search, you come up with the Tree of Vedic Literatures, images of the Tree of Vedic Literatures here. There's all kinds of graphics that describe the Vedic literatures. And furthermore, you can get a little bit of a literary background on this from Wikipedia, the Tree of Vedic Literatures, Tree of Vedic Literature. I'm nervous. Literature, Tree of Vedic Literature, Wikipedia. Okay, there's the Vedas, there's the Ashwata, the Tree of Jiva and Atma, the Kalpa Vriksha, history of Vedic religion, Rig Veda. There's all kinds of stuff about all of this. Katha Upanishad, and on it goes, all in Wikipedia, which is all actually, all of these things, the Upanishads, there's so many, the Vedas that contained the Upanishads, 108 Upanishads. And there's so many other literatures that you can say are under the canopy of the tree of Vedic literature. Now, Prabhupada here is talking about the Vedas are compared to the desire tree because they contain all things knowable by man. That tree is also described in Bhagavad Gita at the beginning of the 15th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So we can become familiar with, not necessarily in the greatest of detail because there's so much detail, but we can become familiar with the concept that the Vedic literatures are a desire tree, in that they contain all things knowable. They deal with mundane necessities as well as spiritual realization. The Vedas contain regulative principles of knowledge covering social, political, religious, economic, military, medicinal, chemical, physical, and metaphysical subject matter, and all that may be necessary to keep the body and soul together. Above and beyond all this are specific directions for spiritual realization. Regulative knowledge involves a gradual raising of the living entity to the spiritual platform, and the highest spiritual realization is knowledge that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the reservoir of all spiritual tastes or rasas. There's a lot in these two paragraphs that we could discuss, but we'll read on. Every living entity, beginning from Brahma, the firstborn living being within the material world, down to the insignificant ant, desires to relish some sort of taste derived from sense perceptions. These sensual pleasures are technically called rasas. Such rasas are of different varieties. In the revealed scriptures, the following 12 varieties of rasas are enumerated. 1, Raudra, anger. 2, Adbhuta, wonder. 3, Shringara, conjugal love. 4, Hasya, comedy. 5, Vira, chivalry. 6, Daya, mercy. 7, Dasya, servitorship. 8, Sakya, fraternity. 9, Bhayanaka, horror. 10, Vibhatsa, shock. 11, Shanta, neutrality. 12, Vatsalya, parenthood. The sum total of these rasas is called affection or love. Primarily, such signs of love are manifested in adoration, service, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. And when these 5 are absent, love is present indirectly in anger, wonder, comedy, chivalry, fear, shock, and so on. For example, When a man is in love with a woman, the rasa is called conjugal love. But when such love affairs are disturbed, there may be wonder, anger, shock, or even horror. Sometimes love affairs between two persons culminate in ghastly murder scenes. Such rasas are displayed between man and between animal and animal. There is no possibility of an exchange or rasa between a man and an animal, or between a man and any other species of living being within the material world. The rasas are exchanged between members of the same species. But as far as the spirit souls are concerned, they are one qualitatively with the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the rasas were originally exchanged between the spiritual living being and the spiritual whole, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual exchange, or rasa, is fully exhibited in spiritual existence between living beings and the Supreme Lord. Going right back again to the beginning, the last word is souls. So this fruit has become even more tasteful, although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. So this Srimad Bhagavatam, this mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literature, is first of all relishable for all. Once you get a little taste of this stuff, you can't turn away. Prabhupada used to say, be careful. Be careful. Otherwise, you get addicted to Krishna. And actually, when we read on a little further, we realize it only takes one hit of this drug and you're hooked. And the the addiction never wears off, and you can't get free from it. But the side effects are not deleterious. They don't kill you. They actually bring you back to your eternal life, your eternal situation. But be careful. There's a verse Rupa Goswami has in one of his prayers. It says, if you're at all attached to your material situation, don't go down to the Jamuna at Vansivat and look on the smiling face of Govinda. Because if you do just once, then your material life is actually finished. Just a note of caution there. But then throw all caution to the wind and just, as it says here,
Too late.
It's too late already. You're already hooked, you guys. So, but don't worry, because you're drinking Amrita Drava Samyutam. You are drinking deathless nectar, which is semi-solid and soft, and therefore easily swallowable, and is perfect in all respects. So don't worry. Stick around. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is therefore described in the Shruti mantras, Vedic hymns, as the fountainhead of all rasas. When one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchanges one's constitutional rasa with the Lord, then the living being is actually happy. Very powerful statement. Constitutional position. Constitutional means it doesn't change. The constitution of sugar is sweet. The constitution of the juice of a mango is that it is sweet nectar. And it's never anything else. And if it is anything else, then it's not mango nectar. If it's not sweet, it's not sugar. It's inseparable from the substance. You can't call the substance sugar if it's not sweet. Simple fact. You can't call a chili, or you can't call something a chili if it is not pungent, like that particular taste is. So it's something which is inalienable. You cannot change it. You cannot separate it from something. So we all have a constitutional relationship with Krishna in one of the 5 primary relationships or rasas that is taught. Primarily, such signs of love are manifested in adoration, friendship, parental affection, and conjugal love. The others are secondary rasas, and they apply primarily to relationships in the material world. When it says, when such love affairs are disturbed, there may be wonder, but they also appear within these rasas, but not in the way in which they appear in the material world. That's another discussion. But the point is, Krishna is the fountainhead of all rasas. And when one associates with the Supreme Lord and exchanges one's own individual, intimate, unique, constitutional rasa with Krishna, it's not just that there's these 5 basic rasas. Within each of these rasas, there is individual manifestation of the rasa in each individual person. So when you come to a description of Krishna's associates in the spiritual world, we see there's the cowherd boys, the gopis, the elderly gopis, the elderly gopas, the cows, the calves, and so on. But each individual is exactly that, a unique individual. And that principle of uniqueness and individuality also even exists within material existence. Like if we all put on our screens now, if we all revealed ourselves to each other right now, let's just stop sharing for a moment and let's all be very brave and turn on our videos. Everyone, please. Everyone, just please do it. Come on, everyone, all 21 people on this little Sangha. Everyone, turn your video on. Let's see you. And let's see each other. Look at each other. Look at the faces. Every single face is unique. And there is only one of you. Even you see so-called identical twins. Once you start looking closely, you see, no, there's differences. So here we are, all unique individuals. It's very interesting. So probably it's Krishna's arrangement. Super Krishna's camera's not working because all we have is his logo picture, and it's the face of Krishna. All unique individuals. Even Sonali Srivastava, who is not turning on her video. Even she has a unique face. So even in the material world, this concept is there. Constitutional and therefore unique nature. Where are we? So, and in this situation, we get into relationships. We become attracted by the features of other people, whether it's their physical good looks, whether it's their intellect, whether it's all of the opulences of Krishna are manifested to some degree or another, or not manifest to some degree or another. But even we become attracted to ghastly things. But we become attracted by the opulences or the reverse of the opulence, the wealth, the fame, the strength, the beauty, the wealth, the fame, the strength, the beauty. What's renunciation? What's the sixth one? Wealth, strength, beauty, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. We become attracted to one or more of these features in other people, and we enter into relationships, and we seek intimacy in relationship. We seek love in relationship. But here we see Krishna is the fountainhead of all of this. And although we are not able to enter into intimate relationships with many people, we just don't have the time or the energy to do it. Krishna is unlimited in his ability to enter into intimate, unique, personal relationships. And every single living entity has a unique, individual, and personal relationship with Krishna. So these Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has its constitutional position, which is endowed with a particular type of rasa to be exchanged with the personality of Godhead. In the liberated condition only, this primary rasa is experienced in full. Therefore, if you try to experience this primary rasa by hooking up with someone in the material world or something in the material world, you cannot become satisfied. There is, as Bhakta Mick said, no satisfaction in the material. Can't get no satisfaction. You cannot become satisfied. Just as a fish, no matter what you do with a fish out of water, it's a fish out of water and it's going to die. And that's what we are. We are all fish out of water in the material world, flapping around, waiting to die. However, if we are thrown back in the water, it's a different situation. So if we are able to re-enter the nectar of our relationship with Krishna through hearing about these things that we're talking about now, then, as it says here, we become actually happy, and because we experience our relationship or the relationship that we are hankering for in full. And in full, as I said before, it is amrita, it is deathless. Never was there a time when we did not exist, nor Krishna, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Therefore, the relationship is eternal and ever expanding, ever increasing. And it never becomes hackneyed or dry or boring because it's ever fresh. These are the qualities of what is spiritual. And we are spiritual, and Krishna is spiritual. Right now, we are separated from that because we've entered into what Krishna calls his separated energies. We've separated ourselves from Krishna by entering into the material rasas, the tastes that we experience only through the contact of our senses with the objects of the senses in this material world. And everything else is forgotten. But this sound vibration of Srimad Bhagavatam is very, very powerful. There's a very nice verse later on in the second canto that we can bear in mind here. I'm going to open up another, so we can just flip back in a minute. Let's open this up to Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2. Now let me see if I get it right. chapter 8, verse 5. Pravishtakana randrina swanam bhava saroruham dunoti shamalam Krishna shalilasya yata sharat. The sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, that is Srimad Bhagavatam, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger, and hankering. Thus, it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. And then, next verse. These three verses are very important. Dautatma Purusha Krishna Padamulam Namunchati Mukta Sava Pariklesha Panta Sava Sharanam Yata. A pure devotee of the Lord, whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service, never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, for they fully satisfy him, as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. What a statement. The lotus feet of the Lord fully satisfy the devotee, just as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. We're all on troubled journeys in this material world. This material world is a troubled journey. And once you're in it, there's no way out of it. That's the reality. There's no way out of the material world once you're in it. Because it's a labyrinth, the labyrinthine nature of the material world. It's the biggest labyrinth you can think of. There's all kinds of labyrinths. You can look up labyrinths. There's all kinds of amazing labyrinths that people build. And people's, anyway. But there's no labyrinth like the material world itself. No matter how big a labyrinth you may create, it's nothing compared to the labyrinths of the material world. And that you'll get some sense of also if you go back and you read the first verses of the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. You get a sense of the labyrinthine nature of the tree of the material world. And it's actually the tree of the Vedic literatures. Now, where have I gone? We'll stop that and we'll come back to where we are. Okay. Nigama kalpa taro galitam phalam sukha mukad amrita drava samyutam. This Srimad Bhagavatam, relish this Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire tree of Vedic literatures, even if you are a liberated soul. Now, that's a very important understanding to have. Liberated soul is a person who's actually achieved a situation of neutrality to the material world, but they are not yet engaged in their constitutional position of relationship with Krishna. It's very, very important to understand the importance of Srimad Bhagavatam, because Srimad Bhagavatam is deals with the theology of the Supreme, of God as a person. I'll share screen again and read something to you about that, which comes a little later in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 5th chapter. Where are we? we'll open up and go into that 5th chapter. Sorry to have to bounce you around like this, but it all adds up in the end. First canto, 5th chapter. You can make a note of this and read it for yourself later. But it's Narad's instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam. And in there, he has this verse. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert person retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated, all of us, due to material attachment, all of us, should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your grace through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. Now, if you bear in mind our verse under discussion today, it is dravya. It is practically pre-digested. Srimad Bhagavatam is very easy, actually, to imbibe. And it's very easy to swallow it and become imbued with it. We'll get into the details of that in the next class, but I just wanted to read a little something here that Prabhupada says. Theological science is a difficult subject, especially when it deals with the transcendental nature of God. It is not a subject matter to be understood by persons who are too much attached to material activities. Only the very expert who have almost retired from materialistic activities by culture of spiritual knowledge can be admitted to the study of this great science. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly stated that out of many hundreds and thousands of men, only one person deserves to enter into transcendental realization. And out of many thousands of such transcendentally realized persons, only a few can understand the theological science specifically dealing with God as a person. Srila Vyasadeva is therefore advised by Narad to describe the science of God directly by relating his transcendental activities. Vyasadeva is himself a personality expert in this science, and he is unattached to material enjoyment. We learn more about his character in this chapter later on. Therefore, he is the right person to describe it, and Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, is the right person to receive it. Then in the second paragraph, Srimad Bhagavatam is the topmost theological science. It therefore can react on the laymen in medicinal doses. Because it contains the transcendental activities of the Lord, there is no difference between the Lord and the literature. The literature is the factual literary incarnation of the Lord. So the laymen can hear the narrations of the activities of the Lord, thereby they are able to associate with the Lord and thus gradually become purified from material diseases. The expert devotees can also discover novel ways and means to convert the non-devotees in terms of particular time and circumstance. Devotional service is dynamic activity, and the expert devotee can find out competent means to inject it into the dull brains of the materialistic population. Such transcendental activities of the devotees for the service of the Lord can bring a new order of life to the foolish society of materialistic men. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his subsequent followers exhibited expert dexterity in this connection. By following the same method, one can bring the materialistic men of this age of quarrel into order for peaceful life and transcendental realization. So I think we have an hour and a half, Subha Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
So we have a half hour left.
Yeah.
I won't go on because there's so much more to talk about.
Yeah, I want to keep last 15, 20 minutes for questions. So after half an hour, we can open it for the questions. Over to you, Prabhu.
So we can take questions and comments now, can't we? Because we've got to finish at 9:30.
No, we can go till 10 o'clock. So,
Who can stay on till 10?
yep.
There's a thing here where on reactions you can raise your hand like that. Could I have a little raising of hands now? Please, everybody, come back. Don't just switch off on me. Come back. Come back. And put your hand up if you can stay till 10, or you can only stay till 9. If you can stay till 10, put your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or you can put your hand up even if I don't see you. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of you could stay till 10. How many could stay till 9:30? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. How many? Well, how many are going to go now then? Everybody, if you're going to go now, if you have to go now, it's best to go now. And then those who want to stay on till 9:30, we'll do questions for them now. And if those who want to stay until 10 want after 9:30 to stay on, they can. So those who have to leave now, you can leave now. Those who want to stay till 9:30, I'll take any questions or comments from anybody now. And if you want to ask a question, do like Ashok, Meena here, Anita is raising her hand like that. If you want to ask a question, just go to reactions and raise your hand like I've done, like there. Okay, so do you have a question, Anita?
No, Prabhu, I'm okay. I don't have a question at the moment.
Does anyone have a question?
I'm also fine, Prabhu, at the moment. We will listen to you only.
Sorry?
I don't have a question. I'll just listen.
So shall I just go on talking or? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll share screen again and we'll go back to the purport. We'll go back to where we were. Nobody has any questions yet. Okay, these Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has its constitutional position, which is endowed. That's a beautiful word, endowed with. Endowed means actually, because we're eternal, then love for Krishna is eternally established within the heart of every living entity. So we have a question. Rebecca, you have a question.
Yeah, I had my hand up before. Sorry to interrupt. How do we know what we are to Krishna? So am I his friend? Like, I think I'm his friend because I act like a friend to him. But you know, it's apparently revealed to us what our constitutional position is in relation to him.
Firstly, our constitutional position. There's one basic factor, one basic inalienable quality of our constitution, and that is that we are all eternally servants of Krishna.
Yeah.
We might not be fully aware or even become fully aware of our individual particular service relationship with Krishna. In the beginning.
Is it offensive to feel different affections because we are material? So
I haven't finished.
Oh, sorry.
you need to hear the whole answer. And then maybe there's another question. Because I was talking about endowed. If we go back to where we were in the purport, Prabhupada says, these Shruti mantras indicate that every living being has its constitutional position, which is endowed with a particular type of rasa. So then that endowment is eternally there, and therefore love for Krishna is eternally there. But it's dormant while we're within the material world. It becomes covered. It goes to sleep. We become disassociated with it. But it becomes reawakened. Actually, love for Krishna becomes reawakened. Immediately we come again in contact with Krishna from the right source. That's another discussion as well that we need to get into in future. But rest assured that Srila Prabhupada has come in a disciplic line, an unbroken line of spiritual masters, speakers of the Bhagavatam from Sukadev Goswami. And therefore, this deathless nectar has been handed down uncontaminated. So because you come in touch with Srimad Bhagavatam in this way, then actually your love for Krishna has been reawakened. And it may have some qualities, or it may have all the qualities of your particular relationship with Krishna. But the one quality which also permeates the primary rasas, and you can see it also within relationships of love in this world, is the principle of friendship. And one will naturally, very quickly, feel that one is in a friendly relationship with Krishna. Because Krishna himself states in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita that I am the dearmost friend of every living entity. And also, if you take Bhagavad Gita, the way it's set up with Krishna speaking to Arjuna, you can understand that Krishna is speaking to you through what he says to Arjuna. Actually, when you pick up Bhagavad Gita and read Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is speaking to you. And there's a very important verse in regard to what you're bringing up in the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in verse 1865, where Krishna says, Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mami vaishyazi yuktvaevam. Mami vaishyazi sat. I got it mixed up with another verse, which is practically the same. Mami vaishyasi satyam te pratijane priyosime. And it's good to compare that verse with the other verse, which is like it, which is the 34th verse of the 9th chapter. The 9th chapter is called The Most Confidential Knowledge. And the culminating verse of that chapter is Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskaru mame vaishyazi yuktvaevam atmanam matparayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Now, just comparing those two verses, the first 2.5 lines are exactly the same. Manmana bhavamad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyas. Then in the first one, it goes after that, yuktvaevam atmanam matparayanaha. Sorry, I'll get my tongue around these. Yuktvaevainam means thus being fully absorbed. Atmanam, your soul, at matparayana, devoted to me. But Krishna takes it to another level when he repeats it, and he says, Satyam te pratijane priyosi me. Satyam means truly, te, to you, I promise you this. Truly to you, I promise you. Prabhupada translates that. Because pratijane, I promise you. Truly to you, I promise. Priya, dear, asi, you are me, to me. So the second half of that becomes when he reiterates it. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So Krishna takes it to a very intimate level with Bhagavad Gita. And he reveals this, that he's your friend and that you have this eternal relationship of friendship. But friendship is just the beginning. Just the beginning. That is like, in one sense, the unripened mango. But that friendship, the nature of that friendship will develop and become more personalized, and more qualities of that relationship will manifest as time goes by through you practicing devotional service, doing things for Krishna. Service means you do something for someone else. And devotional service, devotion means from a vow. Devote, to devote yourself means following from a vow. We become devotees, devoted to serving Krishna and only serving Krishna. Become exclusively servants of Krishna and give up service to our senses and service to our minds and service to our egos. So it's only natural in the beginning that we feel a very friendly relationship with Krishna, because Krishna is being very friendly to us. This Krishna consciousness movement, this Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is a very loving and friendly gesture. And Srila Prabhupada is presenting Krishna consciousness in such a way that even we, the most materially diseased living entities in this Kali Yuga, are able to imbibe, digest, assimilate, and manifest this philosophy of life. So, yeah, it's natural that you feel these things right from the beginning. But at the same time, we must maintain a decorum and understand that the only reason we're in this material world in the first place is because we turned our back on Krishna. We broke up with Krishna. I've talked about this to some of you before, but I think it's worth going over again. Say you're in a loving relationship with somebody. You're deeply in love with someone. Deeply, deeply in love. But then you begin to wonder, well, is this all there is? Is this it? Maybe I can have something with somebody else. Maybe I can have something more than this with somebody else. Or is that kind of state of mind develops to the point where you decide, yes, there's something else. I've got to go and find it. And you say to this person, you break up the relationship you have with this person, and say, you know, I've got to go my way. I've got to find something. And then you go off and you get into other situations, other relationships, and time passes, and you experiment, you explore. But after some time that's passed, then memories of or feelings about that person begin to arise again. Or maybe you see a photograph of them, or you come across a love letter from that person, or something. Something begins to remind you of that person, and then you start to look at your life again, and you realize, actually, I haven't experienced anything like that. I experienced in that relationship, and actually nothing compares. Well, there's that great song that what's her name, O'Connor? What's that beautiful name? Come on, Sinead O'Connor. Nothing compares to you, and she sings about, since you've gone, I can eat my dinner in a fancy restaurant. I can do this, I can do that. She, verse by verse, she goes through, since you've gone, there's all this other stuff I can do. But then the refrain is, but nothing compares to you. Nothing compares to you. And we have this realization as we become Krishna conscious again. We begin to realize, oh, I love Krishna. I love Krishna. I love everything about Krishna. And you begin to also realize through the practice of devotional service that Krishna loves you. So you go back to this mundane situation, and you approach that person again. You somehow or another find out this person who you broke up with, who, by the way, never stopped loving you. And this is the fact. Krishna loves us all unconditionally. He always has loved us. He loves us now, and he always will love us. And that is eternal. There is no beginning and there is no end. We temporarily interrupted all of that. So, back to the mundane example, you think, oh, and somehow or another, I got to find that person again. I got to get back in touch with that person. And of course, in this day and age, that's pretty easy, isn't it? Just go on Facebook. Pretty much you're going to find, people come in touch with people from their past in all kinds of situations. And you get in touch with that person, and at some point, and because they loved you, because they never stopped loving you, they let you in a little bit. They'll maybe answer your request for being a friend on Facebook or whatever. And then at some point, you're going to reveal your mind. You're going to reveal your heart to that person and ask them whether they'll have you back or not. And because that person loves you and has always loved you, they will take you back. But in the beginning, there's going to be some conditions. And so, but by this time you're desperate. So whatever you want, anything, whatever you want, I'll do it. So then they let you back in and you follow the rules. You follow the rules. And then gradually, the original relationship is reestablished. So Krishna's not cheap. Krishna's not cheap. Can't buy me love, as the song goes. Can't buy me love. You can't buy love. It's not a deal. It's not a business deal. Therefore, Krishna says, you just surrender to me. You just surrender to me. And how do I surrender to Krishna? Well, Krishna says, make it very clear. You just approach a spiritual master. You approach a guru. You approach somebody who is my representative. And you surrender to them. Prove that you love me by loving my dog. Prabhupada used to use that example. He used to say, a rich man, a big man, he has a dog. And you want to win the favor of that person, then you make a fuss of the dog. I see it all the time here now. You go out for a walk, people are walking their dogs. And the dogs, they're all sniffing each other out straight away. But then if you want to have some kind of interaction with a person that you meet, things are so contaminated in this age, you can't just talk to somebody in all honesty and just and them not be afraid that you're out to mug them or whatever. So people are walking along, and the fact that you've got a dog is actually like a calling card. It's like a sign. It's a message to everybody. Yeah, well, I'm open to some kind of exchange, but start with the dog, right? Start with the dog. So look at that. And you say something about the person's dog. And then the next thing you're talking about all kinds of things with this person. But you can't just start talking about all kinds of things with that person on a bus, because you can't take the dog on the bus. So you can't enter into the bus of transcendental knowledge and start talking to anybody about anything and doing whatever you like, because you don't have the proper introduction. You can't just barge into this stuff. So the spiritual master introduces you to Krishna. And that introduction goes in stages till eventually, one day, your spiritual master will put your hand in Krishna's hand. So it's nearly 9:30. So anybody who's got to leave at 9, do they have a question? 9:30, have a question? Is that okay, Rebecca? Are you still with us, Rebecca? Rebecca's gone, I think. Rebecca.
She literally dropped off about a half a second ago.
Oh, okay. So it's nearly 9. Oh, Anita.
Yes, Hare Krishna Prabhu. My question before I have to leave the session now is how and when would we know that we are worthy of becoming a disciple of a guru? That's my question. Thank you.
Well, there's discipleship and there's discipleship. In ISKCON, to become an initiated disciple, there are basic things. You have to be chanting 16 rounds of Mahamantra a day. You have to be following the 4 regulative principles, and you have to be engaging in devotional activities under the guidance of a representative of the spiritual master, or the spiritual master directly instructing you what to do. That's initiation. But if you read Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the section where Srila Prabhupada met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, and there's a quote there in there from Srila Prabhupada saying, that first night I met him, I accepted him as my guru, not officially, but in my heart. So acceptance of a guru may come to an official ceremony we call initiation, but it begins a long way before that. And it's not simply a matter of a formality. It's a matter of a change in your heart, something happening in your heart. So, first of all, you accept a spiritual master in your heart. And then you begin to follow the instructions that the spiritual master is giving. And you practice following those instructions. You may not be completely able to follow all of the instructions that are there in the beginning. But there's a very interesting purport about that in the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse number 31, where Krishna is talking about this whole business of following instructions and following injunctions, where he says, well, actually, we'll read 30, well, it's a series of verses, so we might as well just hear them all. 29, 30, and 31. 29 says, I'll just read the English. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, that's us. When we come in contact, before we come in contact with all of this, we're bewildered by the modes of material nature. We are ignorant. So, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. That's us. But the wise should not unsettle them. Although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. And then Krishna goes on to say, therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, and free from lethargy, do your duties. In this regard, fight. And then, this is the verse I wanted to talk about. Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manava shraddhavanto nashuyanto muchyante te pikamavi. Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow this teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage of fruitive actions. Now, in the purport, Prabhupada says something very, very interesting. Oh, it's a one paragraph purport. The real point is the last sentence, but to get to the last sentence, you have to read the full purport. So we'll read it. The injunction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the essence of all Vedic wisdom, and therefore is eternally true without exception. As the Vedas are eternal, so this truth of Krishna consciousness is also eternal. One should have firm faith in this injunction, what is that? The previous verse. Surrendering all your works to me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claim for proprietorship, and free from lethargy, do your duties. Fight. Follow your nature in my service. There are many philosophers who write comments on the Bhagavad Gita but have no faith in Krishna. They will never be liberated from the bondage of fruitive action. But an ordinary person, with firm faith in the eternal injunctions of the Lord, even though unable to execute such orders, take note of that, even though unable to execute such orders, becomes liberated from the bondage of the law of karma. In the beginning, here's the nub. In the beginning of Krishna consciousness, one may not fully discharge the injunctions of the Lord. But because one is not resentful of this principle and works sincerely without consideration of defeat and hopelessness, he will surely be promoted to the stage of pure Krishna consciousness. It's a process. It's a process. It's a process like I described right at the beginning. It's a progress of maturation, of maturation, of maturing, of ripening. So what you can't do now doesn't mean it's something you won't be able to do it in the future. But the way you'll do it in the future is by doing now what you can do and practice doing it. And one thing will lead to another. Little drops of water will wear away the stone. So first of all, we have to accept a guru in our hearts. And the wonder of coming in contact with an Acharya of the caliber of Srila Prabhupada is that in Srila Prabhupada and in his teachings, we find our guru. Prabhupada is our guru. And through that, we understand that Krishna is our guru. But we have a skin on. We're embodied in this skin. And therefore, we need Krishna, or a representative of Krishna, a guru with a skin on. We need somebody that we can see and touch and hear. But what you'll find is that all of Srila Prabhupada's disciples are simply trying to represent him. So the best thing is, first of all, we all accept Srila Prabhupada as our guru, as our Shiksha guru. As he says at the beginning of this Bhagavatam, he dedicates the Bhagavatam to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, and he says he lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. So we begin to try to follow the basic instructions, and then we hear Krishna Katha from a representative of Srila Prabhupada, either a direct disciple of Srila Prabhupada or a Shiksha disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And then a phenomenon begins to develop with us, and that is that, like this verse that we're talking about, each one of us has a constitutional nature. Yes? And so we will have a particular resonance with what we read and hear from Srila Prabhupada. And then as we hear people who represent Srila Prabhupada, we will feel a similar resonance with some of them. And then if we want to become an initiated disciple, we have to then seriously start to consider with which one of these do we have the deepest resonance, based upon what we are imbibing from Srila Prabhupada. And all along the way, what's happening with us while this process is taking place is that we are practicing following these basic things, chanting Hare Krishna every day, following the 4 regulative principles, day by day, day by day, all of this day by day. It's that fantastic song from Godspell, Day by Day. 3 things I pray, to follow thee more nearly, to hear thee more clearly, I can't remember, but the last thing is to follow thee more nearly. So it's an approximation process. It's a growing process. So while all this that I'm talking about is going on, you're chanting Hare Krishna every day, gradually increasing the number of rounds that you chant, are able to fit into the bandwidth of your day, shift things in your day gradually so that there's more and more time to chant these 16 rounds a day. Become more and more strict in following the regulative principles. Of course, you can try and cold turkey on the whole thing, which is what most of us did. Just give it all up, jump out the window, cast your fate to the wind. I mean, it's a far out ride if you do that, I'm here to tell you. But even if it's a gradual thing, it's always a gradual thing, because even if you do jump out that window, there's still a lot of work to do. But it's a daily affair, actually. Ultimately, you got today and you got tomorrow. So what devotional activities can I fit into today according to the ones that are prescribed by Srila Prabhupada? Starting with chanting Hare Krishna and following regulative principles, and then hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing Bhagavad Gita, and then learning to cook so I can offer my food to Krishna, and gradually. And then Krishna's in your heart. And there's a saying that when the disciple is ready, the guru appears. So Krishna is within your heart and he sees everything. He knows everything. He knows what you want. Other people have a sense of what you need. But actually only Krishna knows exactly what you want. So it's a question of desire, and desire grows as you feed it. You feed your desire. You feed it the right foods. You give it the right things to hear and taste and smell and touch and so on. And it grows and it becomes very strong and very consistent. And Krishna sees that. Krishna sees all this. So gradually, all kinds of things become revealed from within your heart. And so, that's happening in everyone's heart. So there are people who are endowed now with the responsibility of taking disciples, and Krishna's within their heart also, and he's prompting them of when to accept and when to not accept someone, or to what degree to accept someone. Then finally, there's sadhu. I've talked about guru and shastra, but then there's sadhu, this 3-way thing. What you read in the shastra, what you hear from authorized initiating gurus within a society of Krishna consciousness, and then from sadhus in the society. People who might not necessarily be people who will initiate you, but they'll give you sagacious advice. They'll give you guidance and support and encouragement. Then you come to the point where you become firm and free from doubts, and you make a choice. You make a final choice to cross the line and take initiation. But as initiation says, initiate means to begin. So something else begins when you do that. And you have to hear a lot about what are the responsibilities then. Because ultimately we're all responsible for ourselves anyway. So what responsibilities do I want to take on? And again, it's a ripening, a maturing thing. You can't put too heavy a responsibility on an inexperienced, unqualified person. So you have to keep an eye on yourself in that regard. How experienced am I becoming, and how qualified am I becoming, and how sincere am I about all this, and how all of these things. You have to have a reflective process as you go along and see, well, how far do I want to go with this? It's always your choice. You're always free to choose. You can do whatever you like. That's the whole thing at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. I mean, at the beginning, Krishna set up this situation where Arjuna has to do something which, by all moral, social, ethical standards, is anathema, and he won't do it, and he has good arguments for not doing it and keeping things the way they are. But then Krishna says, well, you can do that, but it's not going to stay like this, Arjuna. And then he shows the universal form and demonstrates that in the future, everything's going to be very different anyway. You might cling on to the present, but it's all going to change. And then finally, after hearing all the rationale behind it, all the philosophy, all the explanation of action and the purpose of life and the goal of life and so on and so forth, and how it all sheets back to what Krishna wants everyone to do now. He says, now you consider all this and then just do whatever you like. And then Arjuna says, yeah, I'll do it. I'm firm and free from doubt, and I'll do what you want. I'll surrender to you. So that freedom of choice will always be there with you, even after you're initiated. I mean, I'm sitting here saying all this. How do you know I chant 16 rounds of japa a day? How do you know I follow the regulative principles? The only way you would know that is if you put me under 24-hour surveillance. Because I'm free to do whatever I want. And there's a part of that development as devotees called anatta nivritti. Anatta means unwanted things, our material diseases, our material attachments, our material tastes. They're embedded in us. This body is a manifestation of all of that. And the word is anatta nivritti. Nivritti means to void all those things out. Get rid of all of those things. Leave all those things behind. And what you'll find is that is a very difficult thing. That is a very painstaking thing. And the only way it is achieved is by these practices of hearing and chanting primarily, and all that is surrounded by it. There's one regulative principle, actually, to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And all other principles are upa to that. They are supporting that, enabling that. But we can't do that now. That comes after a lot of practice and a lot of experience, and only after a lot of practice and a lot of experience. So along the way, even after you take initiation, you might fall down. Or you might find yourself in a situation where you can't be as clean as you want to be. Hey, I'm in that situation right now. I'm staying in my sister's house. She's a non-devotee. She has no idea what cleanliness is. Or she thinks she's clean, and she is clean to a certain degree. But the degree of cleanliness that one learns to practice in the process of bhakti yoga, one becomes accustomed to. And then you slip back, or you find yourself in a situation of circumstances beyond your control, and all you can do basically is clear a little space in the middle of it all to be clean in yourself. And that's not the highest standard. But it's pointing out to me, well, you know, I've still got work to do as well. My heart's still dirty. So anatta nivritti is a very painstaking and long process. And in that process, there may be disasters due to material attachments, because the taste for sense objects just doesn't vanish. And Krishna says, even though that may happen, just pick yourself up and get on with it. It's a practice, and you cannot ever give up the practice. And if you do, it's very obvious. There's I think I've quoted it before, there's the famous violinist who was asked, how often do you practice? He says, I practice every day. He says, if I don't practice for one day and I perform that night, I know it. I didn't practice today. If I don't practice for 2 days consecutive and I perform on both nights, by the second night, people who know me know I didn't practice. And then if I don't practice 3 consecutive days and I perform on each of those nights, by the third night, everybody knows it. So we have to just stay in the practice. And when you practice, you make mistakes. But, you know, practice makes perfect. So you never give up. But you start from the inside out. You open up your heart. And Prabhupada just moved Krishna in. Krishna's there, but your ability to sense Krishna's presence is not there. But from the inside out, into the core of your heart, by hearing and chanting about Krishna, by seeing the deity, by serving the deity, by taking prasadam, by being in the association of devotees, by chanting the holy name, by doing all these things that are given to us, practicing them to whatever degree you're able to, then Krishna reciprocates more and more and more. Until finally, one day, one reaches a platform where there's no more anattas. They're gone. And you're fully absorbed in hearing and chanting and serving and doing all those things and not considering anything else.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu, so much for your wonderful guidance. We hope to hear some more nectar from you every weekend. Thank you so much once again. I'll have to leave now. I'm really sorry, but Prabhuji has said that he will send me the link and I will listen to the rest of the class later on.
We're nearly finished, I think. Subha Krishna, you got your hand up? What's happening? Subha Krishna Prabhu, you there?
Sorry, we just got 5 minutes, 5 more
5
minutes.
minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. 5 minutes. Any other questions? No questions? No comments? Any comments? Anybody have their own comments they want to make?
I think Dara has a comment.
Dara?
Haribol Bhagavat. The part where you mentioned about when we get initiated, we're still free, really resonated with me, because I don't know why I had this like concept that somehow after being initiated, I wouldn't somehow have choice. So I really appreciate you expanding on that.
Well, it's like, you know, the Olympics are on right now, right? And all these people are competing in all their games and whatever it is. And in order to get there, to compete in the first place, they've gone through a lot of choice making. And like, it's an if-then proposition, right? You start with the goal in mind. Right, so little so-and-so 10 years old is a good swimmer. And they say, well, you know, in 8 years' time, you'll be 18. And it's 2020, so there's Olympic Games in 2028. So if you practice really hard for the next 8 years, you may be able to go to the Olympics. And you set your goal, your mind on that. Yeah, I want to go to the Olympics. I want to go to the Olympics. Just because this person says I may be able to do it, what does it matter if I don't want to do it? I want to do it. So then, usually that person who's saying that to you is a coach who's seen you just messing around swimming and thinking, you've got a bit of talent. If you practice, you could do this, 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 and this. And if you want to do it, then you'll accept that person as your coach. And that literally, that's what a spiritual master is, the ultimate life coach. To help you shape your life to where you want it to be. Right. Now, in those 8 years, you're going to have to put a few things aside. Right? Other people are going to go and do stuff that you don't do. Or you get up early in the morning and go down the swimming pool and swim for 2 hours. Other people, they sleep in till 8 o'clock and then they get up and, you know, what's that song? What is that like? That Beatles song? Woke up, got out of bed, dragged a comb across my head, made my way downstairs and had a cup. Looking up, I noticed I was late, made the bus in seconds flat, on and on. You know, got to the office, somebody spoke, and I went into a dream. That's how a lot of people spend their mornings.
Of course.
But you want to go to the Olympics and win a gold medal in the 100 meters freestyle, you're not going to do that every morning. You're going to be up before the daylight and you're going to be down there. So if you want this, then you have to do this and you don't do this. Your choice. If you want something. If you don't want it, well, don't bother. That's it. You do whatever you like. And that's it. You do whatever you like. You can do whatever you like, whenever you like. Your choice, always. Okay? It's 10 o'clock, nearly 10 o'clock. If you want something, then this is how you're going to get it. And this, and then we see, that's the whole thing about life coaching, about, how-to books and everything now. This is the ultimate how-to book. How to get yourself out of your material entanglement, get reestablished in your eternal relationship with Krishna, and go back to Godhead. Never take birth again in this material world, and go back to the spiritual world from whence you came in time immemorial ago. You want to do that? Well, here's how. You don't want to do that? Put it aside. Do something else. Well, how do I do that? You go and find out somewhere else how to do something else. Your choice. Always your choice, Dara. Always. Haribol. Oh, thank you all so much for coming and spending your morning with me. I'm so enlivened to see you all, even though some of you are hiding again. Let's see everybody before we go.